Thank you, everyone. It's great to see everyone in person today. I'm Mary Pouton. I'm the Associate Dean for Development for the University of Maryland School of Medicine. It's my great honor to welcome you here today to witness Dr. Rodney Taylor's installation as the Bruce and Isabel Cleland Endowed Chair of Otorhinolaryngology and Head and Neck Surgery. Thank you so much for joining us. These investiture ceremonies have always been a very special event for our school, but today's ceremony also marks a very special occasion. It will be the last investiture ceremony presided over by Dean Reese. Dean Reese began this tradition shortly after he arrived at the School of Medicine 16 years ago. And I'm honored that I've helped produce this event since the very first ceremony in July 25th, 2007, when Cedric Yu was invested as the Carl M. Mansfield, MD, Endowed Professor in Radiation Oncology. And a fun fact, Dr. Santha was also a speaker at that investiture. Full circle today. This ceremony now has become one of the most meaningful and personalized celebrations of the school. This important tradition throughout the year has allowed the university community to come together to celebrate the wonderful achievements of one of our esteemed faculty members. It has become a tradition that highlights that endowed professorships and chairs are among our top priorities and play a critical role in providing support for our faculty who are dedicated to improving human health. These ceremonies have also allowed us to convey the school's immense appreciation to our donors and to demonstrate the power of philanthropy, and specifically today to thank the Cleland family for their generosity. Now, it's my privilege to introduce today's Master of Ceremonies, Dr. Kevin Cullen. Dr. Cullen is the Marlene and Stuart Greenenbaum Distinguished Professor in Oncology and the Director of the Marlene and Stuart Greenenbaum Comprehensive Cancer Center here at the School of Medicine. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Kevin Cullen.
Thank you, Mary. I'm absolutely delighted to be here today for two reasons. Some people who are very, very dear to me are being honored today. It's a great treat to be presiding over the ceremony for this professorship for my good friend and colleague, Rod Taylor. Rod is, as you will hear, is one of the best physicians I've ever had the opportunity to work with. And in the 18 years that I've been here, we have worked together time and time again, taking care of patients with head and neck cancer. He's an extraordinary physician, an extraordinary leader, and I'm very, very pleased to be here to honor him. I'm also incredibly pleased to honor the Cleland family. I've gotten to know the Cleland family quite well through times of adversity, through Bruce's illness over the years. And as I'll talk about a little bit in a few minutes, I've become incredibly fond of Izzy and the entire family. Bruce leaves a great legacy, and your generosity that allows us to be here today, not only for Rod's professorship, but also your support of the campaign and our new building, which we're very excited to have just broken ground for. We can't thank you enough. Our first speaker this evening is my boss, Dr. E. Albert Reese. He is the Executive Vice President for Medical Affairs at the University of Maryland, Baltimore, the John Z. and Akiko K. Bowers Distinguished Professor, and Dean of the University of Maryland School of Medicine. Dr. Reese.
Thank you, Dr. Cullen. Let me add my welcome to that of Mary Pouton and Dr. Cullen, to all of you who are here to celebrate this special event, a career, a life of commitment to scholarship, education, and patient care. Today we will honor Dr. Rodney Taylor on the occasion of his investiture as the Bruce and Isabel Cleland Chair of Otorhinolaryngology, Head and Neck Surgery. We also wish to recognize the generosity, as Dr. Cullen mentioned, of the Cleland family for the creation of this endowed chair. Let's join me in a round of applause for their support. The gift of an endowed chair or professorship is extraordinarily important in academia and very meaningful. It maintains a unique function in sustaining scholarship, in advancing care in a particular field over decades and sometimes over centuries. They highlight the esteemed position in which such gifts are held. Our first endowed professorship here at the University of Maryland School of Medicine was established in 1929 through the estate of John F. B. Weaver from the class of 1894. Over 90 years later, the impact of this endowed professorship is palpable by everyone. Today, Dr. Richard Eckert, the professor and chair of biochemistry and molecular biology, holds that first endowed professorship by Dr. John F. B. Weaver. It demonstrates the perpetuity that these gifts have and the longevity they have over time and the impact they've had on the lives of many faculty members and our school as well. As a sample of some of the endowed professors that we have, I'm going to ask all those faculty members in the audience who hold currently either chairs or endowed professorship to stand to be recognized. Thank you. You can pick them out in the audience. They usually have a red and yellow sash that holds their medallion, unless they have forgotten it at home this afternoon, which happens on occasion. As I said, Dr. Weaver was very prescient. He set the precedent which many have followed over the years to bestow the University of Maryland School of Medicine with nearly 90 endowed chairs and professorships to date. This time-honored tradition of endowed professorships or chairs, fueled by the visionary benefactors, endorsed the School of Medicine's legacy of excellence. Every success that we have enjoyed as an institution since that first gift can be largely attributed to the connection that's created by these gifts. A special relationship was established between the legacy of the donor, the career of the honoree, and the bedrock of this institution. Each endowment has enabled the department to excel, and by extension, the School of Medicine to flourish. Each endowment has delivered a prestigious level of dignity and distinction for a faculty member. Each endowment has provided a special space for the legacy to live on. And each of these allocations have joined together over the years for the grand three-pronged award of life-saving discoveries, superior patient-centered care, and exceptional academic achievements on behalf of the School of Medicine and for the ultimate benefit of the citizens of Maryland and beyond. Over the course of today's program, you will hear from Dr. Taylor's colleagues and friends who will highlight some of his significant career achievements which have earned him the honor through the Bruce and Isabel Cleland Chair of Otolaryngology, Head and Neck Surgery in this afternoon's ceremony. So to you, Dr. Taylor, let me start with first congratulating you on a wonderful career journey thus far. You have been an incredible colleague, friend, scholar, surgeon, scientist, and have made enormous contributions to medicine science. This is not all the accolades we're going to pour in you this afternoon, but that's just a starter. So congratulations. Before we move forward with this ceremony, I'd like to take a few minutes to recognize the donors whose financial contributions made this endowed professorship possible. On behalf of the entire School of Medicine, I'd like to thank the Cleland family for their generous contributions, which has established this endowed professorship. In 2005, Bruce and Isabel Cleland created their family foundation, the Arakawa Foundation, which has a mission to support human and community services in Maryland and beyond. The Arakawa Foundation has been a supporter of the University of Maryland medical system since 2006. At this time, I'd like to ask Dr. Cullen to join me at the podium. I'd also like to invite Isabel Cleland and Samantha Cleland to the stage to accept an award from the School of Medicine. In a moment, you'll see a replica on the screen. It's coming up, hasn't been here yet. Okay, so on the screen, what has been just handed out is a replica of what's on the slide. You'll see to my far right is the so-called circular image of her medallion. You'll see there's a person by the name of Dr. John B.L. Davidge. He was the first dean of this medical school and the founder in 1807. Dr. Davidge was trained at Glasgow in the United Kingdom and has served here in many rounds as deans, not continuously. The back side of the medallion has the inscription on the side, the Bruce and Isabel Cleland Chair of Otorhinolaryngology, Head and Neck Surgery, and you can see in the center part, which you probably can't read from there, it says established in recognition of excellence in clinical research and scholarly pursuits in the area of otorhinolaryngology, head and neck surgery, presented to Rodney J. Taylor, MD, MPH, June 1, 2022. So we have taken that medallion and framed it, and we'd like to give this to you as a token of our appreciation for your generous contribution and making this afternoon event possible. So thank you very much. Let's take a picture. Would you like to say something? Please.
Okay, here goes. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Isabel Cleland. Thank you for all assembling as we honor our dear friend Rod in his new appointment as the Bruce and Isabel Cleland Chair of Otorhinolaryngology, Head and Neck Surgery. I've been practicing that, Rod, all day. Rod, it is my great privilege to celebrate you today. I have valued your clinical expertise, your support, your honesty, and your kindness immeasurably over the past 15 years. I speak on behalf of both myself and Bruce as we thank you for your care. And for your friendship, as we pay tribute to you today. I'd now like to introduce Samantha, our daughter, to share some remarks.
Good afternoon. I am Samantha Mannequin, the very proud daughter of Bruce and Isabel Cleland. I'd like to share with you today 2 stories about Dr. Rod Taylor. The first is a story about the first time I met Rod in 2007. My dad, who had been under the care of Drs. Mohan Santha and Dr. Kevin Cullen, had recurrent throat cancer, which required complex neck dissection surgery. Time was of the essence, and we had a series of important decisions to make quickly as a family, the first and most important being who to use as a surgeon. When Dad's esteemed radiation oncologist and most trusted friend, Mohan, recommended Dr. Taylor as a surgeon, my parents had every confidence that they were in the right hands. My mom and dad called me at work in New York to share Dad's upcoming surgical plan, and of course, I was curious to know more about this surgeon. I did a quick Google search and soon found Rod. Please keep in mind, this was 15 years ago, and a Google search looked a bit different to how it does today. I quickly found Rod's robust and remarkable academic and clinical credentials, and I was also able to pull up just a tiny thumbnail photograph where an exceptionally kind smile looked back at me. Okay, this was our guy. 24 hours later, back in Baltimore, my sister and I were at Whole Foods, stocking up on supplies the night before Dad's surgery. And while we were in the checkout line, I couldn't help but notice the same face I had seen on my computer search screen just 24 hours earlier. After scanning his shopping cart and taking note of ample protein and plentiful vegetables, I shared with my sister that I thought Dr. Rod Taylor was behind us in line. She told me I was probably just tired and overthinking everything, so off we went home to get some rest and prepare for the day ahead. After a teary farewell to our dad, as he was prepped for surgery, we set up camp in the surgical waiting area, and who should round the corner but the same face from my Google search 2 days ago. Sam, he said with his characteristically infectious smile. Yes, I replied, I'm Rod Taylor, and here's the deal. I promise you that I will take really good care of your dad today. He's going to do just fine. But I need you to promise me that the next time I see you in Whole Foods, you will stop and say hello. With that, we knew we were absolutely in the right hands. We were in Rod's hands, and that everything would be okay that day. I share this story not just to detail a moment of heartwarming serendipity, but because I think it so accurately captures how Rod consistently strikes the perfect balance of both confidence and compassion to his very core. The second anecdote I would like to share took place 10 months ago when we were at the University of Maryland St. Joseph Medical Center at Dad's bedside on the eve of his passing. Rod called and said he'd finished in the OR for the day, and he asked if it would be okay if he could come and visit with Bruce for one last time. Of course it would be okay. Upon entering Dad's room, Rod took his hand and thanked him aloud for the privilege of being his physician and his friend for the past 15 years. This moment was incredibly powerful, and I felt so strongly that it was in fact us who should be thanking Rod for giving us an extra 15 years with our dad after that fateful day we first met in 2007. And so today, Rod, we get to say thank you. Thank you for caring for Bruce. Thank you for helping to sustain us as a family during some of the most challenging intervals of our collective lives. Thank you for your house calls, the visits, your texts of both encouragement and concern. Excuse me. Thank you for engaging each of my 3 siblings, and thank you for being an unwavering anchor for my mom. You are now indelibly woven into the fabric of our family's story, and we couldn't be more humbled and more proud than to share in this honor with you today. We thank you.
There are many, many things that I admire about Bruce Cleland, but first among them is his family. Sam, thank you so much. Izzy, thank you. We wish all of you, Mark, James, and Georgia, all the best, and thank you. Thank you so much for all you've done for us. Next, I'd like to invite Dr. Mohan Santha to say a few words about the Cleland family and about Rod Taylor. Dr. Santha, as you know, is the president and CEO of the University of Maryland Medical System, and also the Marlene and Stuart Greenbaum Professor of Radiation Oncology at the University of Maryland School of Medicine. Mohan.
Good afternoon. Dr. Martin Luther King once said that the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands at times of comfort or convenience, but it is instead where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. And by Dr. King's standard, I would tell you my friend Bruce Cleland was a giant among us, who even at his most challenging personal circumstances possessed an unwavering commitment to impacting the lives of those around him. And I can tell you this with certainty because I had the immense lifetime privilege of considering Bruce, Izzy, and all of the Clelands as some of my closest personal friends over the last 16 years. So I laugh now thinking back to the first time I met Bruce and Izzy. It was actually in the Department of Radiation Oncology, where Bruce and Izzy and a family friend came as I was doing a consultation for the first time with Bruce. Within 10 minutes of that consultation, I quickly realized that it was in fact Bruce interviewing me, despite the fact that I was asking all the questions. So what I quickly realized is that Bruce and Izzy were actually interviewing me to decide whether I was going to be on Team Bruce to help him navigate this healthcare journey. So I am incredibly humbled by the decision of that day, because the truth is that now 16 years later, our relationship, mine with Bruce and our entire family, evolved to the point where the entire Santha family considers it a true life blessing to have the Clelands as an integral part of our lives. So, when I think back to 2006, again, as I think about my own life, I think about, other than my wife, my parents, Bruce had become one of my most trusted friends and lifetime advisors. Every major decision that I had made, personally, professionally, I had grown accustomed to the comfort that came from seeking Bruce's perspective. Now, there's a definite process when you seek Bruce Cleland's perspective on any issue. It is likely you will get asked many questions, thoughtful, and if he's really thinking about your decision, there is very likely a spreadsheet that will be created with pros and cons that he will want to sit and go through with you as you navigate the decision-making process. But what I've come to realize is that while I miss him so terribly much every day, I often have to find myself stopping and marveling at what it is meant to be on Team Bruce and what it is meant to be part of the Cleland family. You see, his gift of friendship has taught me life lessons that will undoubtedly serve me well, my children well, and ultimately the communities that we are a part of, because Bruce always had this ability with his wife Izzy to ask questions and to remind us that we have a collective responsibility to think beyond ourselves. It is one of those foundational life lessons that I think has impacted how I am as a physician, how I am as a father, how I am as a brother, as a son, as a leader. And that is how it is that I consider the responsibility that we have to think about each other as we make our decisions. Now, one of the realities of Bruce and Izzy is that they do embody the spirit of philanthropy. They have always understood the responsibilities that come with being members of a greater community. I see it in how they've raised their children. I see it in how they've imparted the expectation of thinking beyond oneself to the next generation. And I see how it is that they've lived their lives. Now, the Cleland family legacy of giving is storied. I promise you that in our collective community, there are very few families who have had the history of giving of the Clelands. One of my life takeaways from Bruce and Izzy was understanding how they think about philanthropy. So as a family, they have always been guided by what Bruce would refer to on our walks together as the essential characteristics that were necessary when they were considering supporting a cause. First, they looked at mission. Did it align with the foundational principles that the Clelands have about impacting those around them? Second, they looked at the values of an organization, and did those values represent the values of how they think about their family? And third, they were clear that they looked at the leadership of any organization and made decisions about whether leaders who they supported would steward the resources of their gifts in a way that was consistent with how they live their lives. So across the region, I would tell you, their impact is dramatic. But despite that, I'm standing in front of you today to tell you, I didn't imagine today ever happening. Despite all of their generosity, I never imagined today would actually happen. Because when you look around our community, you do not see the Cleland name. You do not see it in West Baltimore. You do not see it in Towson. You do not see it downtown Baltimore. You do not see it on the Eastern Shore. You do not see it in New York. You do not see it around the country or internationally. Because again, one of Bruce's and Izzy's foundational focuses was it's never about them. And so the truth is, when I say I could not ever imagine today happening, I say it not because of the size of their generosity, because that is well documented. I say it instead because the gift that they've given us today is not something that's measured on an income statement or a balance sheet. The gift that they have given us today is their name. It is the first time that I am aware of that a gift has been made with the name of Bruce and Isabel Cleland attached to it. And so then I think, why? Why would they do that? Why this gift? Why now? And you should know for certain that this was an absolute conscious decision that Bruce, Izzy, and the family made to be purposeful. And when they think about the why, there's actually only one answer, and it makes perfect sense to me. And that is because of the name of Rodney Taylor. There is but one person that I know of in my personal and professional life who comes to measure up to my standards of what I have for Bruce Cleland by Bruce's way he lived his life. There's only one person I think of who has the ability to think beyond himself and demonstrate it on a regular basis. One person who has incredible intellect and doesn't need to demonstrate that difference every time he talks to you. There's only one person I know of who, and my wife and I, we joke about this with our kids. I've never met somebody like my friend Dr. Taylor. You can put him literally in any room, and you could go away for 15 minutes, and you could come back in 15 minutes, and he's in the center of the room, and everybody is around him. And when you actually watch him work his magic, he does not walk to the center of the room. He becomes the center of the room by the way he engages those who are standing on the outside of the room when he first enters. And so when I think of the Bruce and Isabel Cleland Chair in the Department of Otorhinolaryngology and Head and Neck Surgery in the School of Medicine, it makes perfect sense as to why today, why now, why Bruce and Izzy, and why Rod Taylor. So I know that some 30 years from now, Dr. Taylor, 30 years from now, there will be somebody else who will hold that title. But there will never be the inaugural Bruce and Isabel Cleland Chair like Dr. Rod Taylor. And that gives me great comfort. It gives me great joy. And Rod, on behalf of my family, congratulations to Izzy and the Clelands. I love you, and I hope that today brings you the joy that it was meant to bring when you agreed to do this. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohan. Our next speaker is Dr. Bert O'Malley. Dr. Bert O'Malley, we're sticking with a theme of head and neck medical oncology this afternoon, if you haven't noticed. Dr. O'Malley is the president and CEO of the University of Maryland Medical Center. He was also Dr. Taylor's first boss, who hired him here at the University of Maryland School of Medicine. Since his hire, Dr. O'Malley has gone on to be Dr. Taylor's friend and mentor. And we welcome you back a year into your tenure to Baltimore.
Thanks, everyone. Typically, it's not hard to follow Santa, but man, that is a hard one. Holy mackerel. And as I'm listening to that, Mohan, and that connectivity, that motion, it's inspiring too. And as a cancer surgeon, I don't know the Clevelands, I don't have that bond, but I'm feeling the bond in what's happening today. But to see the privilege to be able to care for patients in general, and the challenge of cancer patients, and then have the privilege to become such close friends is just really special. So I'm touched by that, and I'm grateful to be part of this event. But I'm going to shake it up a little bit. So we talk, do you know those times if you look in life and you had a pivotal moment, and that moment really changes history and sets destiny in motion? Anybody ever seen that happen? Can reflect? You see it in the movies too, maybe in our lives? I call that the Omega event, okay? Then there's the Alpha event in history. So now think of that for a second while we ask kind of a quiz or a question here today. Like, what made all this possible? So think for a second, come up with the answers and see if you can come up with Alpha and Omega in this. So you might say, is it, well, the founding of the University of Maryland, the fact that we have a school, we have a dean, it provided that academic setting, it allowed for professors. You can't have an endowed professorship without a professor. Yeah, that's very important. Okay, that's there. That was maybe not the Omega event. So then you need the incredible generosity and support of a family to provide an incredible gift and donation, to have an endowed professorship and make this happen. So sure, that's incredibly important. So let's go to Alpha first, though. Alpha, Rod, you were born. Okay, it started there. It never would happen without your parents, so they get a lot of credit for the Alpha. There was a lot of in-between and Harvards and Michigans and all these things. That's just part of the path. Then there's the Omega event, and Dr. Cullen gave you the answer. It was me. I hired Rod Taylor. I brought Rod to the University of Maryland from his wayward journey through all these other institutions. Everything else is destiny. So I don't need applause. I'm okay. Thank you. So I just wanted to make that very clear. So, but that was also a gift to me to have that opportunity to hire Rod Taylor. Now, there's always been a debate in the department on who was first. Well, officially on the books, it was Sonia Malexida, which I hired to work at the VA in transition as a resident to become faculty, while her husband finished residency here in plastics and they moved on to DC, and that was their destiny. But then it became Rod or Jeff, and after 20-some years, I still can't figure it out who was actually really the first, a foundational platform in hiring in what is now the Department of Otorhinolaryngology, Head and Neck Surgery at the University of Maryland. I think it was Dr. Taylor, but those two are going to have some arguments afterwards. So, but he might have been that alpha event in the department. So, as I was thinking about making a few comments, and all these great things we could say about Rod, I thought, you know what? I remember writing him a letter. I think I wrote him a letter to become professor. Part of this path to his journey, and so I looked back at my computer and my old files, and I had to go back pretty far and found my old pen files and so forth, and I looked up letters, and there it was, Rod Taylor, professor, October 2018. So I thought maybe I'd read the professor recommendation letter because it embodies so much of who he is and why he deserves this and so much more. But part of the learning in this for all you chairs out there or others, or professors writing letters for others, note that one day the letter they might be your boss in your chair, as Rod Taylor is my chair in the department in School of Medicine. So we got to keep that in mind. So here it is. Dear Search Committee, October 16, 2018. It is with great pleasure that I write this letter in strong support of Dr. Rodney J. Taylor for an appointment of professor in the Department of Otorhinolaryngology, Head and Neck Surgery at the University of Maryland School of Medicine. I feel very confident in my ability to support the achievements of Dr. Taylor, as I've known him for over 17 years. I hired Dr. Taylor, the Omega event, when I was chair of the division at the time in the Division of Oto Head and Neck Surgery at Maryland in 2001. I saw his incredible talent and persona at that time, and I've seen it manifest to the highest levels over the past decade. Now, this is all real. I felt this, and nothing is made up, and this wasn't made to get promotion. This was made because it's who he is and what I felt. So during that, I added that wasn't in the letter. During my tenure at the University of Maryland, I worked with him as both a clinical and research colleague as well as a mentor. Dr. Taylor has certainly contributed and continues to contribute to the University of Maryland in the field of otolaryngology, head and neck surgery. So I'll start by saying Dr. Taylor is not only a tremendous and caring individual, he's a great clinician and surgeon who is held in the highest regard by his peers locally, regionally, and nationally. He has a very active surgical practice and has developed a strong network with local and regional referring physicians in the Baltimore and DC areas. Starting out as a general otolaryngologist, Dr. Taylor has grown into a major head and neck surgeon and who is nationally recognized for his experience and his training abilities. Dr. Taylor is also an integral part of the multidisciplinary head and neck cancer team and is instrumental in the head and neck human clinical trials effort at the Cancer Center at Maryland. With respect to his research interests, Dr. Taylor has developed a strong head and neck translational science program that focuses on the development of novel immunotherapies and that has expanded into a realm of the role of stem cells in cancer formation. I am very aware and impressed with Dr. Taylor's development of a specific antibody-dependent cellular toxicity assay to study the interaction of NK cell receptor polymorphisms, I actually know how to say that, polymorphisms, and squamous cell cancer lines. Gosh, you become a president CEO and you forget how to say science. So he is internationally acknowledged as a leader in the realm of research. I want to also emphasize that he not only made this important discovery in the laboratory, but he translated his work into a seminal phase 2 multi-center human clinical trial. Dr. Taylor's novel translational research and human trial has led to a valuable potential strategy to screen head and neck cancer patients who may be candidates for targeted antibody therapy. So Dr. Taylor has further expanded his laboratory research focus on stem cell immortality and resilience within cancer cells. Can you believe all this from one person? So his work, and this is all real, his work in conjunction with Dr. Michael Zalman has resulted in a successful acquisition of an NIH R01 and an R29 grant. Very hard to get, very challenging for anyone. particularly surgeon scientists, in balancing that mission. His work has received strong peer review acceptance, as in particular a stem cell cancer research therapy publication in 2017. I will not reiterate his extensive CV. I'm only saying a little part of this that outlines his numerous past research accomplishments and funding. However, I will state that his innovative translational research is not common for someone who also devotes such extensive time and commitment to both high-end patient care and teaching. So as I stated above, in addition to his impressive research efforts, Dr. Taylor carries a significant amount of complex clinical care and teaching responsibility. He is highly involved in the service commitment to the institution and the community. Dr. Taylor actively participates in medical student and resident teaching in the clinic and operating room setting and has been acknowledged for his efforts and skills with the Brian Emery Teaching Award, and two times in the past 6 years. He served as Associate Program Director of the Odo HNS Residency and serves as Director of the General Otolaryngology Division, Associate Chair for Research, Director of Otolaryngology at the VA Hospital. His past and present leadership has earned him the role of an interim chair in his department, and I'm confident he will be a top candidate for this highly competitive position. Well, it's amazing that this is all like only part of it. It's also amazing that I actually could write a letter this long. I could barely think this long besides write a letter. But Dr. Taylor deserves it and even more. Well, Dr. Taylor, that also wasn't in the letter, that's an editorial. Well, Dr. Taylor has an active role in service within the institution, and on a national level, I want to emphasize his important service to the Baltimore community and on the international front. He continues to lecture and be a role model and mentor for underprivileged African American youth within the community and to minority students within the University of Maryland. One thing I did not know until I read his CV was the extent of his international community service, providing care in the challenging and remote places so desperately need high-end medical care. I must say the extent of his local and international goodwill, caring, and uncompensated service is really remarkable and should be strongly recognized as a serious differentiating factor in consideration of his promotion. In summary, Dr. Rod Taylor is a caring individual, successful surgeon, educator, mentor, and accomplished translational research, a true humanitarian who is making an impact on a local, regional, and national level within and outside our specialty. I strongly support Dr. Taylor for promotion to professor. And should the University of Maryland School of Medicine have any concerns regarding his promotion to professor, I'd be delighted to recruit him to Penn Medicine as professor. So Rod, that's just a reflection of so many great things. I'm so proud of you, and I'm grateful to be a member of your department and to see be part of this exciting event. Thank you.
Thanks, Bert. Our next speaker is Dr. Jeff Wolfe. Jeff is also an esteemed colleague of many of us, myself included. He is another professor of otolaryngology, head and neck surgery. Izzy, you did very well. I was very impressed. I mean, I've been doing this for years, and I still struggle with that word. He joined the University of Maryland School of Medicine at the same time as Dr. Taylor. That's what this says. And a great friendship was formed. Dr. Wolfe has been a great colleague to Dr. Taylor, and Dr. Taylor considers Dr. Wolfe a brother. Parenthetically, before I hand it over to Jeff, I had the privilege of taking care of Jeff's mom in the hospital recently. And on rounds, after we dealt with her medical issues of the day, we spent some time getting dirt on Jeff. One thing that your mom... So we know, Jeff, for example, about the party that you threw at your house when you were a high school senior and your parents were out of town. That still chagrins them to this day. But there are others, but I digress. Anyway, please join me in welcoming Jeff Wolfe to the podium.
I am absolutely honored to be here. Absolutely honored. So I've known Rod for 21 years next month. We started as faculty at Maryland a week apart, and we've really been inseparable ever since. Early in our careers, we would have lunch together pretty much every single day, every single work day at least. We would discuss our difficult patients, our research, our lives, our families, pretty much everything. We planned research together, we applied and received grants together, and we wrote papers together. We would give combined lectures around the state and that's how we grew our practices. We would help or bail each other out in the OR if we got in trouble. We learned how to be successful academic faculty together. We traveled together. Since we were almost always together, people started calling us the twins, which is ridiculous because I'm so much taller. But people were so used to seeing us together that at national meetings, if we would separate and Rod would go to one lecture and I would go to the other, invariably somebody would walk up and say, "Where's Rod?" Like, we were attached like that. Needless to say, I know Rod pretty darn well, and I feel that I can speak about him for days on end, but I only have a few minutes. I will start by saying that Rod Taylor is a phenomenal person, a fantastic chair, the first African-American otolaryngology chair in the country, which I think all... But contrary to popular belief, Rod is not perfect. Unlike most talks where the speaker will give the person a bit of a hard time, but then finish with how great they are, I've chosen to go the opposite direction. So this is called Rodney J. Taylor, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good. Rod is a phenomenal mentor and a teacher. From students in the Cure Scholarship, to colleagues, to residents, to medical students, he is a consummate professional, and he takes people under his wing, and he is always available. He's a leader. He's got this rare skill of hearing both sides to any story. I can walk in his office and complain about something. He'll be like, "Well, so-and-so might think this way." I'm like, "Yeah, you're right." He's a phenomenal physician and surgeon. He's got a great bedside manner. He's attentive, and he's caring. He has the highest EQ, emotional intelligence, of anybody I have ever met. Bar none. He's a phenomenal father, and he's great with kids. People used to say, "Oh, Rod's so good with kids. You think he'll be a good father?" And he's not. He's a phenomenal father. A few weeks ago, we were out to dinner with Casey and Rod, and we're talking about Max, and it was Max's bedtime, and Casey said that she reminded Max it was his bedtime, and he said, "That's right, Mom, I have to go rest my genius." Where do you think he got that from? Rod is a family man, a great husband, son, brother, and uncle. He's a great friend. He's always available to help out during times of trouble. A few weeks ago, as Kevin said, my mom was pretty ill, and it was Mother's Day, and she was in the ICU here. And I called Rod in the morning, because those of you who might not know, Rod lost his mom earlier this year, and I just called him to let him know I was thinking about him on his first Mother's Day without his mom. And he said, "J-Dub," which is what he calls me, "we're brothers. This morning I got up and I went and I visited your mom because your mother is my mother." That's a really special thing. Rod is truly interested in people. Anytime you meet somebody, especially in the operating room, his line is, "What do you do for fun, and are you any good at it?" He listens. He's what I would describe as a receiver rather than a broadcaster. He doesn't really talk about himself. He really listens to other people. He loves to be challenged. He makes friends everywhere he goes. If you're ever in an elevator with Rod and somebody walks in with a tie on, Rod will say, "Hey, I like your tie." In which case, that man would usually say, "Thank you." And now Rod throws out, "You know, I'm from Philly. And in Philly, if someone says they like your tie, you're supposed to give that to them." And that starts a whole conversation. Rod is confident and comfortable in all situations. He'll come to the family gatherings, and he's the type of person who your parents like him more than they like you, which is very difficult. And he's always big with the, I'm better with a hug than a handshake. So that's Rod. Then there's the Rod Taylor sayings. If you're a good friend with Rod, you know pretty much all of these. When he's ready to leave, "I'm out of here like a breeze through the trees, snatching down all the leaves." And that is over the 20 years now, sort of morphed to trees, and he leaves. Another Rod Taylor line, "I was doing a dance move that is illegal in 7 countries. He would call me and leave me a message on the phone. "Big Rod giving you a shout out to keep the doubt out." When it comes to food, if somebody gave him food that he didn't want, Rod would always say, "You're not going to put that in the temple, are you?" And then if they offered it to him also, he'd say, "Oh, I can't eat that. It's almost swimsuit season." But one thing that nobody knows is that Rod has a thing for Cheetos. And I never knew this. Sorry. And the way I figured it out is he would be at the VA hospital, and he'd be there on a Friday, and I'd be there on a Tuesday. And all of a sudden, I'd go to the computer that we shared, and I'd start typing, and I'd have Cheeto dust on my hands. And the residents are like, "Yeah, Dr. Taylor loves Cheetos." He's a humanitarian. He's gone on multiple surgical trips with Partners in Health to Haiti. He formed the nonprofit Maryland Ear, Nose, and Throat Abroad, has been to Cambodia, Kenya, Vietnam, Uganda, Fiji. He's always in a good mood, and he is always positive. He's very humble. He received an honor at the American Head and Neck Association this year. I didn't know about it until somebody took a picture of it and showed it to me. He tries to see the best, or does see the best, in everyone and in every situation. He pushes the fashion envelope, sometimes a little far, and I'm like, whoa, Rod, I don't know about that. And then his response is always, this is too fashion forward for you, dog. You're just not ready for it. Rod is a great athlete, except in racquetball. We played racquetball in 2003 and 2004. I beat him twice, and we've never played again. I wonder why that is. And he's a fun person to be around, the best person to be around, always happy. I'll call the next part the bad or not so good. He's always late, always really late. We were once at a fundraiser. We were supposed to meet at a fundraiser at 7 o'clock, and it was when he was living in Mount Washington. I'm there at 7, and I'm just waiting for him outside. I didn't want to walk in by myself because I don't have that Rod Taylor personality where that. Oh, I'm at the bottom of 83. I'll be there in a few minutes. It was like 45 minutes. So the bottom of 83 was, I'm still at home, I'll see you in a bit. He might pretend to know things that he doesn't. I remember we were walking across the street once, and I had been to a museum, and I know nothing about art. And I was like, oh, there was a painting by Monet or whatever. And Rod's like, oh yeah, Monet, he was from this place, and he did this, he's an impressionist. I'm like, really? Yeah, how do you know that? I'm classically trained. Meanwhile, I looked it all up. He made everything up. He didn't know anything about it. He'll always be first in line to grab food or cut into a birthday cake. Then the line is, show little leadership. So he'll always go into... He'll come to your house for dinner, stay for 15 minutes, and then ask you to take all of the leftovers home. You're going to hate this. He's not a great driver, and he's an even worse passenger or navigator. The number of times when he was like, oh, you drive, I'll tell you how to go, he's either asleep in the car or he's on the phone. And he can fall asleep anywhere. He's the only person I have ever met that I've had to wake to board a plane multiple times. Nobody falls asleep while they're waiting to board. That's Rod. He does not read beyond the second line of any email. You should know that. The number of times it was like, hey, Rod, you got to finish this before, you have to apply for this, whatever. What are you talking about? Oh, it's in the email. So another example of that is every time we do a surgical mission, we try and do something fun at the end. It's a sort of a bonding experience, and you fly all over the world. You want to do something fun at the end. And when we went to Uganda, we did gorilla trekking. And gorilla trekking is basically you hike into the mountains and you hang out with the silverback gorillas. But we had this long list in an email about things that you're supposed to do or not do. And one of the things was wear neutral colors, brown, green, any bright colors. The gorillas can get aggressive. So we're getting in the car on the way to go to Dulles, and Rod and I are in the back seat. Two friends of ours were driving, and all of a sudden I see this bright light out of my eyes. I look down. Rod's wearing these fluorescent yellow boots. And I said, Rob, those aren't your hiking boots, are they? He goes, yeah, what are you talking about? And our friend Felicia and Emily, who are in the front seat, are like, Rod, you're not supposed to wear those. He goes, I don't know what you're talking about. The other thing about Rod is he can't remember anyone's name. The line is, I'm better with faces than names. And I've been with him so many times where he just calls somebody the wrong name and they just go, yeah, and they just walk away. All right, the ugly. And the reason why I'm calling this the ugly is because these are things that Rod does solely to aggravate me. He knows it gets on my nerves. Again, we're brothers. As we all know, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. But I usually try and follow the rules. Rod doesn't. If I elect to follow such rules, for example, not butting in line at the TSA because we're late for a flight because Rod was late to pick me up to go to the airport, he'll sit there and say, Wolf, don't be a sheep, which I can take. And then he gets right in my face and he goes, bah, because he knows how angry I got. The other thing Rod does is he tells everybody he's the alpha dog. Now, alpha dog is defined as the leader or authority in a group, especially in a group of friends. For example, he will come to the office when we're seeing patients. It'll be Monday, and Kevin Pereira would be there, and I would be there, and the rooms are tight. And all of a sudden, I see them sneaking a patient into a room. I'm like, Rod, you can't use that room. That's Pereira's room. And so he would then sit there and say to me, I'm not going to repeat the way he would say it, but he would say it at the top of his lungs, "Alpha dog up in here, woof woof." So despite the things that he says, Rod Taylor is not the alpha dog that he perceives himself to be. And now I would like to demonstrate this very briefly. So this is when we were in Uganda, and that is a silverback gorilla. And you can see the gorilla walking. You'll see a squatting Rod Taylor that gets shoved. Now I slowed it down. Note the hiking boots. And the just one more time. Rod, congratulations. Nobody deserves this more than you. I am so fortunate to call you my partner, my colleague, and my friend. Thank you.
Oh, don't wear fluorescent. Note to self, don't wear fluorescent boots when you're visiting the gorillas. All right. Our final speaker this evening is Dr. Scott Strohm. Dr. Strohm is the Robert Kaplan Executive Dean and Vice Chancellor of Clinical Affairs for the College of Medicine at the University of Tennessee Health Science Center. Dr. Strohm served as Dr. Taylor's chief resident at the University of Michigan and subsequently as his chairman here at the University of Maryland School of Medicine, Department of Otorhinolaryngology. Did it better that time. Dr. Strohm is someone who Dr. Taylor considers also to be a brother, and Dr. Strom's father, Marshall, inspired Rod to pursue a career in otolaryngology. Please join me in welcoming Scott Strohm.
TP, the total package. The nickname by which Rodney Taylor's Harvard football teammates referred to him. Of course, Rod referred to himself different. Number 22 on the field, number 1 in your heart. From a personal perspective, I've been fortunate to work with Rod first as my junior resident and subsequently as my partner for almost 30 years. We learned how to operate together, have traveled together extensively, and have shared the joys and sorrows known as academic medicine, celebrating our successes and lifting each other up on those occasions where we fell short. He helped raise my children, who know him as Uncle Rod. Based on these shared experiences, I know for certain that if the moniker "the total package" was appropriate then, it is even more appropriate now, looking back at the life and career of a man who has given so much and still has so much more to contribute. We've all heard the axioms. If you see me in a fight with a bear, you better go help the bear. Or, how are you living? With the refrain, like every day's Thanksgiving. Or more serious ones like, don't wait until you go home to have fun. These maxims reflect the joyous and youthful spirits that makes everyone around Dr. T, as he likes to be called, better, and instills in colleagues, students, and staff a sense of esprit de corps. Indeed, the combination of these traits with an enormous sense of integrity, perseverance, and compassion has enabled Dr. Taylor to lead the Department of Otorhinolaryngology Head and Neck Surgery at the University of Maryland School of Medicine on the journey to become one of the finest programs in the country. This is the Rodney Taylor I know. This is the Rodney Taylor who's my friend. Underneath Rodney's casual veneer lies the solid core of a man who cares and who cares deeply. Coming from a modest background, Rod served as the president of both his undergraduate and medical school classes at Harvard University, emerging as a leader whose voice resonates with compassion, charisma, and integrity. Having performed a parotidectomy on a patient whose face was not moving the following morning, Rodney immediately drove back from his vacation to re-explore the parotid bed, finding the facial nerve fully intact. Witnessing the horrors in Haiti following numerous natural disasters and social unrest, Dr. Taylor participated in multiple clinical missions despite the personal inherent danger to care for those in need. Knowing how his high school education contributed to his success, he volunteers on their board, serving as an example to other rising stars in the neighborhood from where he came. When our beloved colleague, Dr. Dwayne Sewell, got sick, Rod made it his personal mission to listen and support not just Dwayne, but his entire family. Support which continues through his friendship with Dwayne's widow, Catherine, and through his ongoing mentorship with Dwayne's two sons, who are now at Stanford and Pennsylvania. This is the Rodney Taylor I know. This is the Rodney Taylor who's my friend. In his 1999 clinical cancer research paper, Dr. Strohm wrote a series of maxims, one of which is, big institutions don't love you back. One corollary to this statement is that you do what you do because you love to do it, without expecting anything at the end of the road except the satisfaction to a job well done, the patient's help, the learners who benefited from your wisdoms, the new ideas brought to the fore, and the communities bettered by your presence. Another and perhaps more important corollary is that your family and friends transcend your work, and that the true measure of a person is his or her willingness and commitment to protect and nurture those relationships. This willingness and commitment is inherent to Rodney's very being. Rodney has always placed tremendous value on the concept of family, with his mom, may she be a blessed memory, dad, and brother playing a central role in his life. His love of family is not restricted to this core, but is also shared with others, such as his niece, Morgan, who he has taken on trips, exposing her to different cultures and experiences, and has grown her academic horizons by having her join our lab as a summer intern. More recently, after what some would say was an indeterminable waiting period, Rod married Casey, and they are now the proud parents of Miles and Max. I truly cannot think of luckier children. My wish for you is that you may enjoy the blessing of this wonderful family for all your years, that you will never miss one of your children's sporting events or recitals, and that the boys will give you as much joy and satisfaction as you have given your parents and so many others. In coming here today, many of you said, "It's so nice of you to come." And my response for them was, "There's no place I'd rather be. I love you."
Well, let me just permit me to go off script for a moment, because we've been having these investitures now for the past 16 years, and I forgot to ask how many we have done, but several. And Rod, this has to be one of the most enjoyable investitures Jeff, you're a terrific storyteller. And it's just been a lot of fun. One, we've been celebrating the donors and the gift of philanthropy and just the joys and the rewards and the interactions, friendships that have been built over the years. We've celebrated, Rod, so many aspects. I thought I knew a lot about you, but I learned a lot more as I sat there. I mean, I knew about your humanitarian trips. I knew about your many, but there's so many things that we learned about you. So, celebration of your life and your career. And lastly, I want to say, we have several investitures that have been lined up. But one aspect that didn't come up, Rod, folks don't know how persuasive you are. So I said to Rod, I don't think I can do your investiture because, there's several. I'm stepping down in a couple of months. Rod said, I need to do mine. Give me any time. I'll make it work. So by the time Rod has finished working me over, I had to say, yes, I'll do it, Rod. I'll do it. And I'm so glad you did. I'm so glad you did because it's been just so enjoyable, so rewarding to see a career that has been so rich, yet so young. You have so many years ahead of you, and you've invested so much and given us so much. So it really is a great delight and a great pleasure for me to actually do the next part of the ceremony. So would you join me, please, Rod and Dr. Cullen, join me to my right. So, Rod, this is the part of the ceremony that really makes it happen, that which you've been here for. So, Dr. Taylor, I'm delighted to present to you one of the School of Medicine's and the university's highest honors, the Endowed Chair. This honor acknowledges your career accomplishments and the contribution that you have made to academic medicine. I know that your peers and your colleagues in attendance and elsewhere would agree with me that you are most deserving of this honor. I'm now pleased to present to you this medallion, which we showed you on the screen, will be the front and the back in A. Thank you. So Dr. Cullen, would you help me do the honors? I think you don't, Dr. Taylor does not have to stoop. You should be okay. So, Dr. Taylor, we hope that you will proudly display this medallion and what it signifies to the appropriate audiences, such as graduation, convocation, investitures, or whatever other appropriate event that you may deem. But really, it's just been an honor, a real pleasure to do this for you and with you. So we're going to stop, and you can take the remaining reasonable time to respond.
I came in here today very excited and just excited to see everyone. And Pete Carino warned me that it might get a little emotional. And Sam, you definitely, in recounting our connection, Peter, you're so right. And I'd like to start first with just thanking the Dean's Office, Mary, Matthew, and all of those behind the scenes who have made this occasion possible. And today we celebrate the tremendous generosity of the Cleland family. The chair endowment is the first endowed professorship that our department has ever had, and I am humbled and grateful. As I reflect on the numerous individuals and the formative experiences that have influenced my journey, those who have significantly molded me would overflow this hall. I've organized my thoughts into 3 categories: significant mentors and friends, my department, and the Cleland family. I owe my greatest debt to my mom and dad. They raised 2 boys, 10 and a half months apart, in the inner city of Philadelphia, and I'm keenly aware of their enormous sacrifice. My mom, who has been mentioned, passed away just a few months ago. She would have been very proud to be here. Was an incomparable anchor for our family, and she insisted that we receive a good education. In our neighborhood, a quality education meant a private school experience. I regularly overheard the conversations as they struggled to determine how they would pay for our tuition, and they always found a way. Their collective sacrifice and commitment to our education resulted in my brother and I receiving our college degrees, the first to do so in our family over the many generations. My parents also provided a high-level example of a great work ethic. My mom proudly reminded us that she retired with 30 years of perfect attendance from her first job, and then went on to do 16 years of perfect attendance in her second career. My father, an artist who will turn 80 this year, continues to work a 6-day week, and he too has been a model of consistency for demonstrating a great work ethic. Without their sacrifices, undoubtedly, I would not stand here before you now. I must also thank my brother, Rick, who was instrumental in my early development. His encouragement, friendship, and love have been absolute, and Ricky has always celebrated any success that I have enjoyed as if it were his very own. I will always cherish him for that. Notably, I spent my elementary years at the St. Barnabas School in the Germantown section of Philadelphia, and while it no longer exists, the dedicated teachers there gave us a strong foundation. It was a small, close-knit environment where every student looked like me, and they implanted in us that we were valued. I took from there a strong confidence in my own scholarship and learning. Then I attended Chestnut Hill Academy, an upscale private school where I was fortunate enough to earn an academic scholarship, and I enjoyed an amazing educational experience filled with great teachers, coaches, and mentors that provided all the academic tools to prepare me for the rigors of college. Freshman year, Michael Lamole and I became great friends, and he later became a college roommate. And Mike, who's now an academic neurosurgeon, and his family took me in as one of their own. His dad, Jerry Lamole, who was a renowned cardiac surgeon, invited me to the operating room, which was my first exposure to medicine. And it ignited and that exposure ignited in me my dream to become a doctor. Countless other experiences with the Lamole family allowed me to dream about my possibilities in a new light. I realize now Michael has always been more than a friend. He has been a peer mentor who, by his example, invited me to pursue excellence on a higher plane. Thanks, Mike. Briefly, Harvard College provided an incubator experience where my confidence, development, and growth accelerated. As a scholar athlete who was involved in student government and many activities, I became aware of my leadership assets and learned to understand how to communicate effectively across complex situations involving brilliant people. It was there that I met a lifelong mentor, Marshall Strohm, a pioneering otolaryngologist and the most influential reason I chose our specialty. His charisma and complex clinical practice were captivating, and after shadowing him, my calling became clear. I did my training at the University of Michigan, and it was the perfect place for me. I was surrounded by the most talented surgeons and teachers in our field, and they shaped me to become an academic surgeon. Importantly, where 1.7% of all otolaryngologists are African American, our residency comprised of more than a third African American, many of whom have made great contributions in our field. It gave me confidence to interact with like peers who were achieving excellence. My chairman, Greg Wolfe, was a brilliant clinician scientist who changed practice paradigms and compelled our specialty to prioritize quality of life and function for our patients. His bold and imaginative enthusiasm for patient care and research was a template for how I modeled my own practice and career. And Doug Chappere was my great champion and friend, and technically the most gifted surgeon I had ever known. He taught me, you never escape your training. Later, I joined the faculty here at the University of Maryland and integrated into a rich community where every day has led to continual growth, fulfillment, and satisfaction over the past 20 years. During that time, many of you have groomed me, inspired me, and given me enduring friendship and collegiality. Bert O'Malley, as it has been pointed out, was my first boss. He was and is a tireless leader with a rare mind for innovation and courage to pursue what others may not envision. His leadership tenets have been invaluable to me in my professional and personal life. Shortly after, Bert became chair at Penn, and when I was still a young physician, after vacillating quite a bit, I spurned the offer to join his faculty. He was gracious and taught me that our friendship and his mentorship were far more important than any personal relationship. Later in my career, when I began to receive national requests for chairman jobs, Bert was one of the first people that I sought. He invited me to his home and helped me as I began to develop my own leadership vision in otolaryngology. My next boss was Scott Eric Strohm. As a boss, Scott cared little for discrete supervisory norms. He never learned that a boss isn't supposed to be a great friend, big-hearted, loyal beyond reason, and a champion for whatever was good for his faculty. Our friendship dated back to our Michigan days, where he was my chief resident, and he took me under his wing then and never stopped giving his all in support of my career. There is no one who has impacted my career as an otolaryngologist as much as Scott. He helped me to develop scholastically and administratively. He simply believed in my leadership skills so absolutely and provided opportunities to cultivate them. Mohan Santha. From day one, he simply made it his business to care. When I arrived, we had the pleasure of mutually caring for many wonderful patients. And with his magnanimous personality, he was immediately welcoming, and soon we became great friends. Over the past 20 years, he has been a colleague, an unfailing friend, a brilliant mentor, and a critical sponsor for my leadership. Of the many things I appreciate about Mohan, his authenticity and his quickness to pick you up when needed while putting matters in perspective, or when he feels it's necessary, to give you that speech that a coach gives when his team has suffered the worst loss of the season. And friends and family, trust me, that's a closed-door speech. Mohan, thank you for being you. To my work brother, Jeff Wolfe, you have made everything great about being at the University of Maryland better. We joined the faculty in 2001 and have grown up together. We have literally traveled the world together and have had more rich experiences than I can recount. We have been there for each other for so many highs and even a few lows. Your friendship has been a blessing. Dean Reese, my dean, you set a standard of excellence for us all to follow. And I am so grateful that you have entrusted me with leading our department. To my friends, many of you whom are here today, thank you for providing the opportunities for my growth and evolution in my humanity. You have been so vital to my happiness and maturation. To my wife, Casey, sons, Miles and Max, thank you for providing the inspiration and support for me to realize my dreams. I appreciate you, and you all make me feel very lucky. Briefly, but no less importantly, I want to pivot to my amazing department. You transcend the term colleague because you are truly family. You are some of the most dedicated, talented, empathic people I know. Our shared values and commitment to patient care, education, research, and service make coming to work exciting and rewarding. Collectively, you, along with those who preceded us, have elevated our small department into a nationally recognized top-tier program with strengths in every facet of our mission. I learn from you, I admire you, you inspire me. Thank you for giving your all to be a part of something special. In training, we learn to give our very best to make our patients whole. And in the practice of medicine, we learn that our patients do the same for us. This beautiful dynamic is one of the greatest joys of being a physician. Bruce and Isabel Cleland, along with their entire family, have regularly made me and so many others better. The patient-doctor experience has transcended into deeply meaningful relationships. We've shared many important moments in each other's lives since the time we've met. When I think of the Cleland family, 3 words come to mind: resilience, generosity, and service. I met Bruce more than 15 years ago. He had completed 7 weeks of intensive chemo and radiation, only to learn that his throat cancer persisted. I performed a 12-hour surgery that included splitting his jaw, resecting a substantial part of his tongue, and removing cancer that had spread to his neck. Over the next 13 years, I repeated some version of that same surgery no less than 5 additional times for new cancers that had arisen. I share that detail simply to convey the fortitude and strength required to rebound from his disease and his treatment. Often, the extensive surgeries we perform unfairly rob vital speech and swallowing function from our patients. And when multiple surgeries have occurred, the tour de force to eat and speak after each episode can be unimaginable. I watched in awe, time after time, Bruce will himself to return to form. I have seen tears and brief despair, but Bruce never allowed those moments to linger. He simply defined his targets and worked diligently to get there. That work included his daily 2-mile hilly walk around Circle Road, which both Mohan and I were lucky enough to experience with him, because it always afforded Bruce's captive audience and the benefit of his enormous wisdom and sage advice. I also observed that same resilience manifest differently with Izzy, who transformed her matriarchal role in service to Bruce and their family during his undulating journey. Smart and cheerful, Izzy lights up a room. Her strength and eternal optimism formed an irrepressible complementary partnership with Bruce. Thematically, I've witnessed firsthand similar resilience from their children, particularly Samantha and Mark. Each has a personal journey that has required strength and facilitated their impressive individual accomplishments. Our friendship has motivated and renewed me. From a generosity and service perspective, the Cleland family has consistently and quietly made an impact on their local community and around the world. Matters of health, education, human service, and the environment have focused their generosity. On a personal note, I was training for the 2013 New York City Marathon when I happened to bump into Bruce and their daughter Georgia on the running trail. Bruce happened to mention that there would be an event before the marathon, and I should come and join. Evelyn told Mohan to join as well, and he ran the race. And before we knew it, we were at an enormous event celebrating the 25th anniversary of Team in Training, an international organization that trains everyday athletes around the world to run marathons, triathlons, and more. We would learn that this amazing organization that has raised more than $1.5 billion for leukemia and lymphoma research was founded by the Clelands in 1988. So in closing, I would like to express my deepest appreciation and gratitude to the Cleland family and for your transformative commitment of the Bruce and Isabel Cleland Chair of Otorhinolaryngology, Head and Neck Surgery. Our department will honor your values and emulate your spirit. If one day someone was to describe our department as one that embodies the values of resilience, generosity, and service, as your family has, I could not be prouder. Thank you.
Dr. Taylor, congratulations, and to the Cleland family, thank you so much. This concludes our program. I would like to invite all endowed chairs and professors to come up for a photograph with Dr. Taylor, and please join us at the reception in the back. Thank you all for being here.